Welcome to the Introduction to Game Development and Design. I am Poornima Seetharaman. I'm currently the Director of Design at Zynga. I have about 15 years of experience in the gaming industry. I have been a co-founder of two independent development studios. I'm a Women in Games ambassador. I recently founded the Women in Games India community as well. I worked on games like Farmville 2 Country Escape, Bioshock Mobile, NFL, Neopets, and How to Train Your Dragons franchise a lot. I have been recently inducted, as of last year, inducted into the Women in Games Hall of Fame. I have also been the Mentor of the Year runner-up at Women Tech Network last year and a Special Recognition 2020 winner. I have recently been awarded Outstanding Women in Game Development in India for the IVA Awards. These accolades came through very recently, and I'm super happy about it because I think we all definitely need validation to, get through for all the efforts we put to, and this, in a way, encourages everyone else to also participate. Thanks, Ashley. And about me, I'm a gamer. I started off as a wedding planner. Became a programmer. That was my academic engineering thing, brought me into programming, which happened to be a game development studio. So that's where I realized there's a career that can be made out of it. Largely been a game designer. I've been an application designer, marketing consultant, always a student, a producer, speaker, curator, product manager, studio head, and entrepreneur. I think all of this, I think gaming and game design has always been a larger part of my life and will always be. And so why do games excite me, right? So for me, I think video games are a source of entertainment, right? But I always wonder, like, can they be something more? I remember my time when I was playing this game called Zeus, which was about Greek mythology. And I started getting intrigued about Greek mythology itself through games. Since then, I used to always wonder, can I do more than this, right? Like, can games be that particular source where I can completely do something that's changes the course of things or changes the impact, like brings about a change in thinking. So I think it is possible. While we may not be able to measure the impact, we can definitely bring about the questioning, the change in people, in their mindset on what is it that they are asking for. And we can also bring different diversity into it. Like me being here, I may be privileged to something and I may be not to other few things, but through games, I can bring these mediums across the board. And I have always compared game experiences like dreams, and I've said this like in multiple sessions as well. So for me, when I'm dreaming something, and suppose by some weird way we figure out a way that everyone can get the same dream that is induced into them, even then I feel that some of us may have the similar experience, but some of us, even with the same set, will experience it very differently. And that is very close to games for me. I can create a game for a particular player type, and even they will fluctuate and be very fluid between how they approach, what motivates them to play, and all of that. Now, when it comes to what is a game, right? And these are some of the industry definitions by some really great veterans. What comes to mind here for me is that there's always rules. That's what we are going to focus on, right? Like in each of these definition, when we're talking about game as a system, game as a play, everywhere we are talking about rules. That is something that comes across as the common factor. So in the first one, it's acting in accordance with rules. In the second one, it is defined by rules. And the third one, it is a game is a rule-based system. So we know for a fact that a game has to exist. It's interactive. It also has a set of rules and goals that we have to achieve for. Now, the evolution of game, right from simpler things that we used to play as small, tic-tac-toes and all of that, to all the way to AR and VR today. We are transcending the reach of games, right? We can now, I recently picked up a VR device, and I can imagine how amazing that experience is, playing something. Like you feel part of it. Games in essence were interactive, but bringing in this dimension, it's becoming a whole lot more, it feels that experience is like, multiplied. So all of this is great, and it's technology is something that games adapt first. I've seen that often in my course of my career. Some new tech comes in. Games are usually something that takes it up and figures out a way to actually go about and changing them and figuring them out. Now let's come to type of gamers. This is my spectrum, and I call it a broad-minded spectrum. I think, irrespective of the game types in itself, right? Like let's ignore that for now. Think about it this way. Like, of course, when I am talking about playing a Dota versus accessing maybe a Candy Crush, there is a wide difference of entry level barrier that already exists, which is why we categorize them in terms of casual, hardcore, midcore as our game categories. But say that barrier is done and you've come through, then what happens? I have seen people who play Candy Crush at an expert level. Think about the game Tetris. There are world championship tournaments that run even today where people are professional Tetris player. And Tetris is one of the most casual games in the, as we call it, right? And then I have actually played traditional RPGs just for the fun of it, not to achieve something, not to necessarily do anything. Sometimes I may just want to know the story. Sometimes I would just want to explore the world and chill and not do anything. So I don't necessarily need to always beat the system, right? Hardcore players are someone who want to be professional at it, want to beat the system. And then you have the casual spectrum who just want to enjoy whenever they get time. And then the mid-core is, we'll set aside some time to figure out and go through some of the games we like. So this is essentially my broad-minded spectrum, and I encourage people follow this because to judge anyone on why they play and what they play. We should encourage everyone to play whatever they want, whether it is a board game, it's a digital game, it really doesn't matter. The extent of the game, the scale of the game, none of it, right? And everyone is a gamer. Like companies make money off these people who don't even sometimes consider them as gamers, especially a lot of casual players who are there. Yes, Emma, yes, you're on the casual side, but you're still a gamer. And it's great. It's why not? I mean, games are beautiful mediums to do that, right? And okay, now let's talk about what is what. So let's talk about game and game design. Now, game is basically, we have talked about what is there is a play, there is a set of rules, the space where you're actually playing this, and the goals. There are some objectives you need to chase. The main thing that makes it different from any other medium is the participation component, the interactivity that a game brings in, right? Now, when it comes to game design is one of the main things that you take to make it into a game. So there you're talking about imagination. You have this great idea that has come into your mind. Now you have to define it. You're going to figure out, okay, I need to extend it. I need to put it in place. I need to explore it, expand it. And then you're going to transmit it. And the transmission can be, in most cases, you work with a team. You need to convey what this idea that you have defined is to the team. You have to reach it to them and you have to put it in a format that they understand. And then you flow into the execution state. This is actually a loop. A game design document also is never complete. A game design document is like a Bible of everything, but it is never really complete. Even in the largest game with like 400 pages of game design document, it is never complete. You may still be like about 70 to 80% accuracy of what these game designs are. Now let's go to a key parts of a video game model. This is from Ernest Adams' workshop. And I think this is one of the best representation of what the key parts of video games are, right? At the core of it, it is very simple. You have the player and you have the core mechanics, and then you have the gameplay mode. Everything just talks to each other in both ways, right? So when a player is inputting something in the gameplay mode, which is we have the interaction model, right? We take that input and then we put an action and we check with the core mechanics what should be the action we should use. And then we portray the challenges back into the camera model, or rather the space in which you're consuming this game, and that outputs to the player. This is essentially your key parts of your video game, which is kind of very similar to how you're watching Netflix. You're selecting something that is in response showing you some options. You're picking one option and then you're consuming it. Except for the fact that here the consumption is not just passive, it's also interactive. Now, just a second. Yeah. Now let's come to game development lifecycle. If many of you are not from gaming and from software, you know software development lifecycle, what exists and all of that. And game development has largely borrowed processes from there. In some cases, we have molded it to fit into our requirements, but it is still based off a software. Now, in this case, we come up with brainstorming, concept and design, create the assets, create the setup, look and feel, while the programmer is working on characters, AI, the physics, then the sound effects that brings it all together, the UI that surfaces, and then we build, check for quality, and then distribute. And this, again, all of this forms a loop. We can make it an iterative fashion, especially when we have genres like free to play games, which is basically free for you to access. You don't have to pay upfront to it. In which case, this cycle is a constant thing. We call it as live ops, live operations. So, where we can constantly update and make it better for the users to consume. Now, some of the game development roles that we have, and I would also like to have like a small call out here. It's largely misunderstood that you need to be a gamer or like complete hardcore gamer and all of that to get into the gaming industry. It's not. There are some disciplines which require you to have good game understanding, that's for sure. Like game design, for instance, requires you to understand game design principles, have understanding of basic genres, economy design and level design and all of that, right? But then there are other roles which it is not mandatory at all. So we have producers, we even have animators, artists, product managers who are not necessarily from the gaming domain. Of course, many of them come here and get converted into players. And when I say players, it's not necessary you have to think of hardcore titles and all of that. Any game anyone plays is good, right? And these are some of the areas where I feel people can come in without having any kind of gaming requirement or prerequisite doesn't exist. And that's a myth that people want to stay away from this industry. I feel like people should come in, especially women and marginalized genders should be coming in a whole lot more into this industry. Yes, it definitely needs to be way more diverse than it is. And unfortunately, it's a global problem. And I think, organizations like this is where we are trying to reach out, raise that awareness and bring more people into this. Now let's get into positive feedback loop. This is an interesting component that comes into almost every game that we play. Think of it as, it's a very simple thing. You have an achievement which earns rewards, and the reward grants you some sort of a power in the game, and the power makes it easy for you to clear the next achievement. When I'm saying achievement, rewards, and power, don't take it for the literal meaning. It's just like a placeholder. It could be any way. It's some kind of a positive effect that keeps wanting you to play the game over and over again, right? Now, then what does it do? So there are two components to it. One, there is compulsion, and one, there is addiction. So compulsion essentially is your willingness to continue. So in this case, you're talking about, say, continuous regular challenges you can offer. You can involve a very engaging storyline. You achieve a flow state, right? A flow state is between routine and burnout. You very nicely achieve that, and that's something you will know over practice, experiments, and all of that. And emotional connect is also a great way to allow people to continue. Then addiction is the willingness to return. So you continue for a stretch and then you get out of the app for that day. And what makes you want to come back and play it? Some of the things that help you continue will continue to be factors for addiction. But other than that, also small, intense doses of pleasure. I think that is a very key component. The pacing of how you would keep rewards or even challenges is super critical in here. And it's easy to obtain. The pleasure fades with time, so you need to figure out how you balance all of this. So we need to provide novelty to get away from habituation, right? So everything, like after a point, we as humans get habituated to something, and then we don't see the merit in doing this anymore. We get bored, so we move on to the next one. So instead, you need to figure out how you can pace these things better for good addiction parameters. Now, when I talk about positive feedback loop, it's a great thing, right? Like you feel achieving, it's amazing, you keep coming back to it, you keep growing stronger, bigger, and all of that. But then it again falls into the same thing as now it's become a habit. Now, even the slightest bit of reward or achievement doesn't give you that sort of essence anymore. So, how do you control this positive feedback loop? So at that point, you can also introduce something called the negative feedback loop. You can even limit the player's power. Like, you cannot enter this area without X equipment. That is limiting them. So they have to now procure that. Now they have a motive. They have some kind of goal they are chasing after. So they will linger longer in the system. Negative feedback essentially is something that's it's the other way. What you have to do in negative feedback is, for someone who is doing really well, you kind of penalize them for doing really well. This, while looks like very bad strategy, it actually works for the people who are behind you. So imagine a racing game, right? You are really good at it, and you are just going up in the front and people are like lagging behind. Now, if I do not put something we call the rubber banding, where at some point we will decrease the power of the person in the front, or like increase the power of the person behind, to give them a small window of opportunity to catch up. This adds for challenge. While it may seem unfair, in the long run, it actually helps both parties. How does it help? Because, say, if I'm really good at it, I keep playing it, I don't feel challenged, I'll get out of the game. On the other hand, if I am someone who is not able to catch up, I keep trying, I never catch up, I'll also feel bad about it and I'll leave the system. In the end, the game developer doesn't have either of their bad player or the good player, right? This is why, as designers, we have to introduce something called the control or the negative feedback loop. Now, when we talk about game loops and positive feedback loops, right? So we have code loops. In most games, especially for free-to-play games, we call something called code loop. They largely align to the positive feedback loop. That's why they work in essence. To give you an example, Farmville to Country Escape, I work on that project. So in that, what happens is you're going to, you have some crops, you're harvesting them, you make recipes out of it, you sell their orders, you even trade them in different shops. You start earning XP and coins that gives you new unlocks in terms of crafts and animals, and then you continue this cycle. So basically, it is a repeated set of actions that you do over and over again. But the way you pace it, the way you bring in those levels, what unlocks when, how do you create those goals, rewards, and all of that, is also critical to make sure people retain in the game. On the concept of retention, right? Why do people stay in the game? So this is like a four nice things that one of the other director of design at Zynga and I have put together in one of the other talks we did. So basically, they're having fun playing the game, right? And they are getting rewards that make it feel like they are improving, in the game and mastering the game, right? So that flows into the growth and mastery aspect of it. And mastering the game feels like new challenges that are coming can be tackled upon. Like you feel a little bit of a boost of confidence that's coming through. And then it's a shared experience. This is social or community. And when I talk about shared experience, it can be anything, right? It can be that is happening in the game. You can shout out and say, like, I did so well, or helping someone in your co-op, any of that. Or even outside of the game, you're going to be like, I was so good at this particular run that I did in the dungeon. And I come back and share that, right? So this, while could be outside of the game, will continue to add into the aspect of why you would stay in this particular game. Now, coming to psychological tactics. So a lot of it, user types, player behavior, then player, strategy, all of that, player motivations, everything is very relevant for game design and game development. A lot of game designers actually do psychology as one of their majors, to understand how to use psychological tactics to get people to retain more, to kind of create a behavior in them, right? Now, so we have endowment progress, which is basically you have invested some time into this and you're going to really enjoy progressing further. You've done so much effort, so why not go all the way, right? Envy and show off, definitely. Even in real life, it's the same scenario. Motivation and endowment effect. So something, I have a larger goal and it really, I want that particular set, I want that particular axe, I want that particular sword. Reciprocity and philanthropy. So someone sends you a gift, you feel, hey, that's nice, they sent me a gift, maybe I'll also reciprocate the same way. Temptation, fear of missing out, scarcity are also huge drivers and triggers for getting people to purchase something or engage with something. Loss aversion is another technique where you're, instead of missing out, you're rather worried about losing something that you put effort into. And then one of my favorites, that I call it as the ADE effect, which the ADE rather, adrenaline and dopamine effect. So every time this falls in line with intense doses of pleasure, small intense doses of pleasure. And this is what drives gaming in essence, right? You're focused on something, you're just getting through it. And when you get it done, you have that dopamine rush that comes through. This creates that behavior. And then once that hits, you're ready to like go back into it and start all over again. Now, yes, quickly coming to MDA framework, I'll just, given the interest of time, I will just quickly breeze through it. We are almost there. The MDA framework, this is basically a design framework that was put together by three researchers. We talk about mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics, which is associated with rule, system, and fun. We will talk about aesthetics here because that is what motivates people to play. And you can fall in any of these spectrums, could be a mix of it or could be something that is a derivative of this. But largely, this is like the guide exists. And any kind of game that you play, go back and think about why do you play that game. It could be because of sensation. Something about that game appeals to you, any of your senses. Maybe it's the sound, maybe it's the visual, doesn't matter. Then game as make-believe or fantasy. You want to explore playing as a dark lord, a dragon, a puppet, a goose, a king, any of that works, right? So game as make-believe, something that you are not, you can use that fantasy into that. Narrative, which is game as drama. We love storytelling. We were curious about what's going to happen, how it will work, and all of that. Then challenge, game as obstacle course, like you're crossing one after the other and you feel that great rush coming through because you're going further and further. Then we have fellowship, which is game as social framework. This can be cooperative, this can be competitive, this can be philanthropic, any of that will come into fellowship. Discovery is game as uncharted territory. You're exploring, you want to find something that's really curious about. You need to access something, you have this amazing treasure map that you can find, you know how to craft a particular portion that is in the far end of the forest, any of that works. Expression, game as self-discovery, how I present myself in the game. It can be anything from character customization to customizing my farm, my garden, all of that works. Submission is game as pastime. Now, in this case, it's like disengagement. You want to zone out, just want to like have a hard day at work, you just want to come, chill for some time, and you're happy in that zone, right? So these are some of your 8 aesthetics on why you play a game. Now, quickly just touching upon gamification. What exactly is gamification? Gamification is where you use principles of games into a service, right? And largely why they do that, why has this been happening is because games can provide that level of push. The ADE that I keep talking about, that can drive. You can work towards a goal, you can help people attain that, make them feel good about by rewarding them some points, leaderboards, ranking, and all of that. And this motivates them to engage with that system a whole lot more, which is why gamification is a huge deal now and even used in edutainment, right? We have seen Khan Academy and all of that where they are using this purpose and even teaching to students. When I realized that I could learn so much from games, which are traditional games, in fact. But imagine then we can easily spin it around. And one of my companies I work for with the How to Train Your Dragons franchise, we did that. We talked about scientific methods, how to use hypothesis and coming up with experimentation. And we used games as a medium and people enjoyed that. Kids enjoyed that, right? So these are some of the derivatives that, oh, I'd love that too. Yes, so these are some of the derivatives that can happen, and there's far more. There's healthcare, there's real estate, all of that. But yes, that brings us to the end. I know we are a little over time, but thank you so much. And we can open for any questions right now. Happy to answer. Hey, thanks, Urjoshi. Yes, Monkey Island is awesome, Orla. Thanks, Michelle. Yes, Mario Kart and the Blue Shell is like the classic example for negative feedback loop. Yes. Sim Farm, yes, I haven't played Sim Tower. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. All right. Any of you would love to join me on stage? Then just let me know. Yes, definitely. Thanks, Orla. Thanks, Amy. Yes, Emma, I definitely agree with that. Even to teach diversity, teach about different problems people are facing, I think games are wonderful, wonderful mediums. Thank you, everyone. Thanks. I'm really glad. All right. So I take it there's no questions. Awesome. I think I got through in that case. Oh, thank you so much. All right. So you can reach me at the email ID, poornima@rowlife.com. And Rowlife is my website. I'm available on social media, on Twitter, Insta, wherever. Feel free to connect. Happy to have you guys on board anytime. We can discuss games, we can discuss tech in general. Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for listening to me and you.